Another place where the enemy has been raising his head is the boardrooms of corporate America. And there is an organization that has been fighting this fight. They are called the Free Enterprise Project National Center for Public Policy Research. And first and foremost, I just want you folks to know what a significant fight they are in, how important this particular battle is. But we also want to remember someone who was the founder of this organization, who passed away this past Friday. And Justin Danhof, the director, joins us. And Justin, if you'll share with my audience a little bit about Amy and our thoughts and prayers and good wishes are with her family.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Pastor Greg.
Yes, sir.
Sad news in the conservative warrior community. Our founder, our CEO, our leader, Amy Ridenour, she did pass away after a valiant battle with cancer. She's a private individual, got a public figure and a public image, but she didn't. A lot of people didn't know, even a lot of allies in the conservative movement didn't know that she was battling cancer for so long. But she was working right up until the very end. I mean, the movement was her passion. And, I have no doubt that if her passion was to write poetry or to be an accountant, that those fields would be improved if she had, chosen those paths. But
Yeah.
her path was to advance the conservative movement, the free market movement, and we are better off that she did that. She founded the organization in 1982 and served as its leader ever since, and there are decades worth of careers out there that all, including my own, that are owed to Amy for giving us the chance to join with her, and her tutelage will and her legacy will live on for a very, very, very long time.
Well,
And prayers, like you said, prayers to her family.
yes.
She does have, she's her husband David. He's currently our president, and they do have 3 children. So.
And remembering, as you've shared on this program, that your organization is one of the only ones that goes into these areas, that goes into these corporate shareholder meetings, and fights back for conservative values. It is a pioneering work that continues to be pioneering to this day.
Yeah, and that's, that was part of the genius of what Amy set up when she founded the National Center. I direct our Free Enterprise Project, which does this work of going after corporations. But the whole mission of the broader project of the National Center was to always fill in the conservative free market voice wherever we thought it needed the most volume, wherever we found it to be the quietest. We wanted to fill in the void. And so, again, we're kind of pioneers in this, going after corporate America that teams up to work on liberal social issues or liberal political issues, not to the benefit of their investors, because nobody else was doing it. And we saw what happened. You can look at Obamacare, you can look at any sort of regulatory state, if you will, and it's all the confluence of government and business teaming up together to squash individual liberty in one way or another. And so we didn't see any conservatives really standing up and doing anything about it. Another great project of ours that they founded decades ago, something called Project 21, because in the early 90s, what you would see on television, if there was an issue that was about race, you would only see the Al Sharptons and Jesse Jacksons of the world. And we, of course, knew that there was, many, many millions of black Americans who are conservative and libertarian leaning, but they weren't getting a spotlight in the media. And so we started Project 21 in the early 90s. Amy had the insight and the vision to say, hey, we need to get Black conservative voices their due. You can't find them in the media. And since then, we've had tens of thousands of media appearances by great Black conservative experts through our Project 21 program. So it's really quite incredible, the mission of filling in voids wherever you find a void, and it's been an incredibly successful plan that she laid out, and that we're going to keep executing as part of her legacy.
And it's such a critical work, as we clearly identify and discover when we talk about what's happening in corporate America. And you and I have talked about this before. You were on previously with me. You were on with me at CPAC, but you were on with me not long ago with Megan Barth, and we talked about the Bob Iger exchange that you were involved in with Disney's CEO. But now you've had another exchange, and this one specifically with the CEO of Starbucks, and talking, and again dealing with this same issue. You confronted him with some very specific questions. Their approach to the elections process. Tell us what it was that they had said, what it was that you brought to their attention and asked them for clarification about, and how they responded.
Yeah, so for listeners who don't know, Starbucks obviously has a reputation of being a liberal-leaning company, and that's from the top down. Howard Schultz is the gentleman who's the CEO. He is an extreme left-wing individual who truly pushes a social liberal agenda through Starbucks. The examples are numerous, but we all know the controversies around the cups. We all know his stance on gay marriage, and those who disagree with gay marriage are essentially unwelcome as investors or Starbucks customers. Those who believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, Starbucks does not want you to buy their products. They don't want you around. And so this issue was a new one. Howard Schultz, in response to President Trump's initial executive order on immigration, wrote an open letter, basically, a Chicken Little, the sky is falling situation. The conscience of America is at risk because of what President Trump is doing, and he must be stopped. And Howard Schultz and Starbucks sees Starbucks as a corporation that should be the opposition party, in a sense, to President Trump. And so they announced in response that they were going to hire 10,000 refugees. Well, that's interesting because in this day and age, there is starting to be more pushback on these liberal corporate actions. And so Business Insider, which tracks these sorts of things, the favorability ratings of companies, noted in an article shortly thereafter that the brand reputation of Starbucks had gone down pretty significantly. And, of course, sales are going to be a lagging indicator beyond following a perception of a brand. And so it was striking that Howard Schultz was willing to make a statement that would, down the line, harm the investors immediately by harming the brand, which reduces the image of the company. And then, again, sales are going to be a lagging indicator. So I went to the shareholder meeting to ask two very basic questions. And the first one, I think, that every investor of Starbucks would like to know the answer to, and that is very simple. How much is Starbucks going to have to pay to vet these 10,000 refugees that they say they're going to hire at their stores all throughout the world? How much are we going to have to outlay for the company to take on this, major hiring that our own federal government admits that sometimes it lacks the resources and the wherewithal to properly vet refugees from certain regions, which is why we're in this crisis. And of course, we know in Europe, there's a lot of vetting that just isn't happening by governments at all.
Right.
And so are they really going to hire those refugees in those stores, potentially putting customers and fellow Starbucks employees at risk for a political point? And again, a political point that is harming the company's brands and thereby breaking their fiduciary duty to all of their investors. And so that was the very first question that, again, I think if you're liberal, if you're libertarian, if you're Green Party, if you're conservative, I think you'd want the answer to that as an investor. And the response was almost comical. Howard Schultz said it was essentially going to cost $0.
Wow.
Not a single penny was going to be spent by the company to do this.
How can you even possibly say that it is a zero cost venture to screen refugees when our own government says they don't have neither the time, the people, nor the funds to be able to do it properly?
Well, his justification, and this is paraphrasing, was essentially that, it doesn't cost anything to do the right thing. And he took the moment to, kind of pound his chest as the great liberal hero and icon, and that the world at large would see the magnanimous nature of the great Howard Schultz, and that people would flood to the stores and pour over all of their money to Starbucks because of Howard Schultz was. That was essentially what I took from his answer, that, they're doing the right thing, and me questioning what they're doing is just simply out of line. Again, this comes from the guy who a few years ago told another shareholder that if he believed marriage was just between a man and a woman, that he should divest from Starbucks because they didn't want people like him around. So this is the kind of guy who we're talking about here. This is who Howard Schultz is. Obviously supported President Obama in both of his elections and supported Hillary Clinton very strongly last time around. So his personal politics are tied up extremely in the actions that he takes as CEO of Starbucks. So that was my second question then, was on the political nature of what they had done, right? Mm-hmm. It seems to me an ill strategy to snub your nose at 50% of your potential customers because, conservatives and supporters of President Trump, they drink coffee too, right?
Right.
It's like if I opened a coffee chain tomorrow and said, women only, no men. Why would I limit my potential customer base by 50% automatically? It seems illogical. And so, again, why take a political stance on an issue that is, it's polarizing. There's strong opinions on both sides. And so the company likes to claim that they don't take any political stances. They only take policy positions. And so in light of that, I said, well, it's interesting you guys say that you only take policy positions, not political positions, because we've searched, and we did our due diligence, we searched, and we looked for any comments that Howard Schultz as an individual or Starbucks as a company made in 2011 when the State Department under then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and under President Barack Obama, they stopped refugees from Iraq for a period of 6 months. A Muslim-majority country, a travel ban longer than anything President Trump is seeking.
Right.
And so I said, look, where was your heavy heart for the refugees then? Where was this long screed written for all the world to see? Where was your hiring of Iraqi refugees back in 2011? Of course, it didn't exist, because the fact of the matter is the company does not take consistent policy positions. They take positions that are political in nature to support liberal causes and denounce conservative ones. It's that simple. And again, the non-answer that Howard Schultz gave really actually is the answer. He never answered the question. He answered it by accusing me, Justin Danhof, of being the one to somehow inject politics into what the company was doing, that they weren't doing anything of the sort. So he wouldn't recognize his own hypocrisy on a single solitary issue.
What was the general response that you got around the room?
This one's funny, and I invite folks, come to nationalcenter.org. We've got a we've got a video up embedded right in the press release is a YouTube video of my exchange with Schultz. And mind you, this meeting is in Seattle, so we're deep in the belly of the liberal beast in Seattle, and the meeting is attended by Howard Schultz devotees. So the booing was about as loud as I've been booed before, which gives me pause to reflect and say I must be doing the right thing.
Well, it's interesting. Of course, that is one of the ways that the left will express itself in trying to silence the free speech of anyone that doesn't agree with them is by shouting them down. And booing is one of their methodologies.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, there's a gentleman behind me waiting to ask a question of Mr. Schultz, and he actually even nudged me with his cane. He was so upset by me daring to, question the wisdom of taking a liberal position when you are a coffee company, and a publicly traded one at that. And so
he nudged you with his cane. Isn't that considered assault? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he
absolutely.
touched you with the cane. I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot, and you as a conservative had touched him, goodness gracious, probably if you had just brushed by him and the air had seemed rather forceful, in how it pressed up against him, he might well have thrown a conniption fit.
Well, it's I'm sure that's likely the case, but I stayed above the fray, and again, I took it as a badge of honor that it goes to show too the emotional level to which folks really are taking these issues and the irrational response. Again, they're trying to silence my speech because it's something with which they disagree, but in response to I ask two basic questions. A, how much is it going to cost? I think any investor should want to know that, but they don't care because it supports their personal political position.
Right.
So they don't even care how much it's going to cost. And
right.
B, why is the company taking political positions, not policy positions, when it claims the reverse? And so it tells you a few things, right? It tells you that the personal politics at the top of Starbucks are more important than the bottom line. That should worry any investor, let alone the actual company problems that they've been facing that have really been in the financial press lately with 4 straight missed quarters of sales. So that should be a concern for all investors. But again, the local Howard Schultz Starbucks devotees, they kind of have their head in the sand on this one. But we're gonna see, because again, the brand perception is taking a big hit right now, as more and more conservatives really tune into this idea that liberals have tuned into forever.
Right.
And that is, the pressuring of corporate America in one way or another. And so I think more and more, and we've seen recent examples, conservatives are paying attention to what corporate America is doing, and, Christian Americans the same. And when they take positions that are antithetical to their belief structure, and they do so in a very overtly political nature like Howard Schultz does,
right.
I think more and more we're going to start seeing blowback.
All right, let me ask you a couple questions. One of them is this. Now, my understanding is the reason that you are at the stockholders meeting, and the reason that you have a right to be there, whether it's in person or by proxy, by someone else, is because the National Center has a stock relationship with these organizations. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We have a portfolio of publicly traded corporations. That's what we use as our entry into the meetings.
And now follow up to that. The indication is that Schultz was going to retire as of today. Did he? Is that for sure what's going to happen? Has he definitely stepped down as of today?
That's correct. His handpicked successor Kevin Johnson takes over as of today. So that's
Okay.
Howard Schultz is staying on, however, to run. There's a new Highline brand of Starbucks, so he's not really going anywhere. His shadow's going to still be there.
Going to still be in the
himself.
doorway. He'll still be in the doorway.
Exactly.
Okay.
And his successor is handpicked anyway. So.
I was just going to ask, and his successor is someone named Kevin Johnson.
Correct.
Okay, and do we know anything about Kevin? We've only got about a minute left.
Well, it's a wait and see. He has a background in tech, so he comes from a little bit of a different background. But I think that all you need to know is that Howard Schultz handpicked him as the successor to know where he's probably going to continue to take the company.
And Schultz, of course, is not running away. He's simply just phasing into something else, but not going to have this particular role in mind. So it's not as though he's not going to be around, shedding his influence and throwing in his 2 cents.
That's correct. I think that Kevin's going to have to be looking over his shoulder on almost every decision he makes, for at least the foreseeable future.
All right. Hey, we are at the end of our segment. Justin Danhof, National Center, nationalcenter.org. You've been listening to Chosen Generation, where no topics off limits, everything filtered through biblical glasses. Signing off on KYAH 540 AM, AM FM 247.com, and Red State Talk Radio.